We're going to look at our last method for solving quadratics, which is using the quadratic formula. So again, in our hierarchy, this is my last one. It's actually the most useful because it can solve every quadratic, but these first two options are a little bit quicker. So I rely on it last just because it's the most steps. You have to write this big equation and simplify all the pieces and everything. So there's nothing wrong with the quadratic formula. I just do it last because it's the most steps, and mathematicians, generally lazy, they want to do the least amount of steps as possible. All right, so in one way, the quadratic formula is the most useful, again, because it can solve any quadratic equation. So if you ever I don't know how to solve this quadratic, do the quadratic formula. All right, the method, you get 0 on one side, so it's just like the factoring method. You have to start by getting 0 on one side first. All right, make sure you combine your terms and write it in the correct order. All right, make sure you have the quadratic formula memorized. All right, this is one of the few things I'm like, you have to memorize this without a cheat sheet because it gets used so often. Also, that negative b over 2a part is useful for the vertex we've seen a lot, so it's helpful to have memorized for two reasons. All right, and then you plug all your numbers and then just simplify. So it's not super exciting when it's solved because it's just plugging a bunch of numbers into a formula, but you might have a problem like this. You want to solve it, and you say you can't do square roots, so if I can't do square roots, I can do the quadratic formula. I got to get everything to one side first, so I subtract the 3 and add the 13x. This is the problem that some people have. They would say a, b, and c, but you have to write it in the x squared, x constant thing. So I have to rewrite it like this first. Then I say, okay, I'm going to do the quadratic formula. A is 10, b is 13, c is negative 3. Put it into my formula. The first big thing I want to do is simplify this square root. So 13 squared is 169. Multiply all this together, you get 120, you get this. All right, square root of 289, in this case, actually works out nicely to be 17. All right, so make sure you fully simplified stuff. And again, this final answer, once you get down to, if there was still a square root here, you'd pretty much just leave it like this. But the square root goes away. So you can find the two separate answers. I can do the plus sign, gives me 1/5, or I can do the minus sign, gives me negative 3/2. So make sure you fully simplify. If the square root goes away, you got to get down to your two final answers. This is the square root method, or sorry, the quadratic formula method. A couple of different things could happen. You could have negatives in here and have I in your final answer. The square root could not go away, and you can't do this final step here. So a bunch of different things can happen, but just to keep the video short, get your quadratic to look like this, plug it into the formula, and simplify.